studied art again and started painting full time again. My artwork has really evolved over the last, I would say, 24 years. And I've done a little bit of everything, basically still lifes, females, figurative work, working my way back up to abstract expressionism, which is what I did in the late 60s, middle to late 60s, I should say. So that's basically me. Now, Aaron, if you could mute the computer and turn on my iPhone, I'm going to give you a virtual tour of my studio. You can see it behind me, basically. I'm sitting at my desk, and behind me is what I call the pit, which is where I do all of my work.
Give me just 1 second.
Okay, and so
Should be good now.
I can turn that off too. So basically, this is my studio, and I'm going to try to move slowly as Aaron directs me. This is some of my artwork hanging on all the walls. It's a fairly large studio by some standards. My studio is 40 feet long by 30 feet deep. And I'm just doing a slow turn around my studio. And all of the paintings on the walls are mine, except for the one that I will show you, which is a González Bravo from Spain, which is one of my dear friends and a phenomenal painter, much better than myself. So this is my studio, and you'll see a lot of my artwork on the studio, on the walls. This is an old painting. I'm sorry.
Oops.
What happened?
I think you swiped. Just swipe back to the, oh, you turned your video off. There we go. Perfect.
There we go. So this is a painting from my abstract expression era in the late 60s when I was at Kansas City Art Institute. The painting was rolled up and stored for like 150 years. And I had to kind of unroll it and try to restore it. So you'll see a lot of gloss on it from the restoration process. And these are some of my paintings. Again, that's the González Bravo painting. I do a lot of large stuff, but I do small things for studies. These are a couple of small paintings of my new work. I'm trying to evolve into some more things like this. On my studio, you will see I have a drawing table where I do a lot of my conceptions and work before I go to canvas. And then in my pit, I call this my pit. I'm going to try to move slowly.
You're moving at a perfect speed.
I have two easels, two very large easels. And they're double-sided. So there's 4 paintings right now that I work on simultaneously. And then I have other paintings that I store in this storage little compartment for other works that I'm just not happy with, or I want to come back to them in a little bit. And then I have other paintings that are finished that are, you know, up against the wall, so to speak. That painting was one I finished last year. It's about, say 4.5 feet by 6.5 feet, something like that. And then there's another female study that I did. My styles kind of range when I do this, like this painting here or that painting up there. It's kind of a mixture of Cubism, Fauvism, Post Impressionistic. It's a Fauvis palette mainly, but I do throw a lot of German Expressionism styles in there. So it's really a mixture. This is my brush table, where I have all kinds of miscellaneous weapons of destruction. And then I have 2 palettes. This is my blue-green dark palette, and then I have my yellows, oranges, reds, etc. And I mix, when I'm doing large paintings, I need to mix a lot of paint. So I will use pie crust pans, and they're aluminum, they're easy to clean, and I can mix a lot of paint. I also do a lot of small stuff using a cupcake holder, and I will put the turpentine and the boiled linseed oil, et cetera, into those cups, and then I will do, you know, fine editing for the colors. And then I have drawers where I keep all of my tubes of paint. Down below there also, all of my various miscellaneous liquids. And that's basically it. These are 2 paintings. This is I did a series called Lucy, and this is a painting that is definitely not completed. I'm very happy with the bottom half, but I'm very unhappy with the top half. So I like the overall feeling, but I haven't finished the top half. So you're catching a lot of paintings in the middle. This is a very start of a painting. I don't know where it's going yet. It's going to be a lot like those 2 studies I did, those 2 small studies I did. Also above the 2 small studies is something that I sold a lot of paintings in the early 2000s to 2000s. I call it the banquet pieces. It's a very, you know, Post Impressionistic, Fauvist, really weird. I call them banquet pieces. They're basically still lifes, but they're really a weird kind of happy feeling. And I have another one up on the wall there you could probably see, which is a large painting, but I sold a lot of those. They just went crazy in the early 2000s. I have collectors in Paris and in Fort Myers, Florida, and in Chicago and in New York that love those paintings. So I constantly get those, but I hate to do them. They're so, to me, it becomes like, I call them my paint by numbers collection, even though I don't say that to my collectors or the people that buy my artwork. So anyway, that's my little altar of the Dalai Lama. One of the big paintings that I did for the Dalai Lama, I did his portrait for the Dalai Lama, I think 2003, 2004, and it went on a tour around the world with a whole bunch of other painters, Chuck Close, Richard Avedon, etc. And it traveled the world for like 12 years. Went to, you know, San Francisco, Tokyo, Oslo, you know, various places like that. And that's a painting that really got me into the art world. So anyway, I moved from Paris here in 2009, and this is what I'm doing. I guess I should ask, do you have any questions?
Great. So if anyone has questions for Chase, you can do one of the following. You can type your question into the chat box. You can just type, I have a question, or there is a function in Neon or in Zoom that allows you to raise your hand. And if you raise your hand, a little hand will appear next to your name, and I will unmute you to ask your question. Looks like Lorraine Sullivan has a question. Are you unmuted, Lorraine? There you go.
I think so now. I always have a question, you know that. Is your studio in your home, or do you separate your whole work process versus where you live?
I don't paint where I live. This is a warehouse district, and there's a bunch of businesses here. I think my total space here, I don't know, it's 4,000 square feet. And then I only use the 1,200, 1,500 for my studio and my workspace. The rest is a warehouse, and my wife does jewelry and things like that. And so she has a workspace here. So I've been here for about 8 years.
I have, do you have a regular schedule? See, I have my studios in my home, and that works for me. And I can jump in and out at will. Do you set up a schedule so that you go in so many hours or so many days, or how do you do that?
I do have a schedule. I'm glad you asked that. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I basically live in the studio. I go about 24 hours in the studio. So I'm gone from the house Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays because I play tennis on Tuesday and Thursday and Saturday. So I basically live in the studio. So I come here, I cook lunch, I cook dinner. My wife comes over occasionally, will work with me in a separate area, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But I basically stay away from the house 3 days a week. And then I normally paint towards the end of the day. Like I'll start painting around 5. I'll take a break at 7 to cook a quick dinner, and then I'll paint until like midnight. And then sometimes I'll paint until 3 or 4 in the morning if I'm really in the mood. So I do schedule 3 days for the studio.
Has the current situation where we're mostly in lockdown, still in lockdown, has that affected your work or your process or your schedule? Or
Not at all, because my wife and I live right on the water.
Oh.
Our house is on the water, and we're kind of remote anyway. So we don't really see anyone at the house. And at the studio, it's just my wife's and my space. Well, I should say my 2 dogs are here. So they spend all the time with me also.
You're a very lucky man.
Yes, I am. I've been very lucky in my life. I met some very interesting people in the late 90s, and it's really helped me out.
And your work is beautiful. Yes.
Well, thank you. I'm pointing at 2 unfinished paintings, and I apologize for that. But
I love your banquet paintings too. They're so happy.
Well, you know, it's really kind of funny. My wife used to work for Caldwell Snyder Galleries in New York, San Francisco, and I believe Carmel. And so she was an art major in college, and she worked for the gallery world. And when I did my first banquet painting, she goes, "We can sell these," and started selling them. So I haven't done a banquet painting in about 5 years. It's really boring. You know, you get into a certain style that sells, and it's like a cookie cutter. And I don't get enthused doing them. That's why I call them paint by numbers.
It sounds like you like the challenge of the throes of being in a painting and deciding what to keep and what not to keep and making all those decisions versus, it sounds like the banquet paintings maybe are too easy for you. Manufacturing, you're not, creating a new. Is that what you mean?
If you look at, I'm going to walk around behind, like I said, these easels are old easels that I bought in France, but there are 2 sides to these paintings. And if you look at this painting here, this is a real departure, and I just don't like it. So I've got a lot of work to do on this one.
Yeah.
And this one here, I think, is a good start. It's a small painting along with that new style I want to get into.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to work on the female piece, the Lucy piece in front. So anyway, I hope I'm not walking around too quickly, but this is a painting that I'm going to probably have fun finishing at some point.
Yeah. At some point. I've never seen a double-sided easel. Is that why?
Yeah, they're really beautiful. And when I did a commission piece, a big commission piece that took me almost 6 months to do last year, that was 7 feet, a little over 7 feet by 10 feet. I had to use one side of the easels together to mount the thing, and then I used a platform to paint the top half, because all the way down it's still 10 feet and I'm only 6 foot.
Wow.
So I had to get on a ladder onto a platform, and that's why I used those cookie cutters. I mean, not cookie cutters, but those pie plates to go up with the paint.
Yeah. And that's why there are sandbags like at the bottom.
Yeah, you notice those. Yeah, it just adds a little bit more support.
Yeah.
You lock down, the tires will lock down on the easel, but it still moves a little bit. So the sandbags adds a lot of weight. So even though you lock them down, I don't know if you could see them, but they've got little locks on the tires. And use the sandbags to hold the easel steady.
Well, thank you very much. Fascinating and beautiful, beautiful work.
What's your name?
Lorraine Sullivan.
Nice meeting you, Lorraine.
Nice meeting you too.
So Chase, both on our Facebook Live and then in the chat here, we have a couple of questions about your lighting in your studio.
Oh.
Okay, hold on one second. When I got the warehouse, there was nothing in here. There was no walls. So I had 2 walls constructed, as you can see, with very large doorways, knowing that I would have lots of things going on. Are you still there? Okay.
Yep, we're still here.
Okay. 2 very large doorways, and I just left it bare at the top because it's a working studio. And then I had drop lightings put in. This is the same kind of style of lighting I had in Paris in my studio. And each of those bulbs are daylight bulbs, except for some. The ones, the canisters that are pointing towards the wall are not daylight. But since I have no windows here, I get daylight bulbs, usually halogen. I've never had to change a bulb out here, and I've been here for 8 years. So they last a long time.
So you're like working in a casino, basically. You never know what time it is.
I don't, in fact. Exactly. And I hope you can see the drop lighting here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Have you thought about, because I know we dealt with this in the gallery about 5 years ago, the gallery, the lighting system that we use, they stopped making the light bulbs. They were a halogen bulb. And so we did switch over to LED. And the lighting has been pretty true. We also haven't changed a light bulb in 5 years. But it was an experience, because a lot of galleries were, I know, hesitant to make the LED switch because the lighting is a little different than traditional lighting.
It is a little different.
But yeah, okay, we have a question from Adriana Pratt. Go ahead, Adriana.
Hello. Hi, how are you? Hi, Chase. Hi, Erin.
Hi, how you doing?
Hi.
Hi, how are you? Well, first of all, I love your paintings. They make me very happy. The studio is amazing. I love it. I have a tiny studio, so that is like a dream, a big dream. And I'm curious about you. You mentioned that you lived in Paris for a while. So if you like to talk, if you want to share a bit more about that, of course, as artists, sometimes we have this romantic idea of like, oh, going to Paris and study art. Is that something that you did you happen to study art because you were in Paris living by chance, or by
No. I retired. I retired in the late '90s. And I decided I've always wanted to live in Paris and paint. That was one of my childhood dreams, you know, when I was in high school in Kansas City Art Institute, etc. But then my life got sidetracked for a little over 25 years. And then I moved to Paris. I got a nice apartment and a nice studio. And I lived there from 1999 to 2009. So it was a little over 10 years. And I lived in the 6th arrondissement. I loved it. I loved everything about living there. But life has its little twists and turns. And I met a woman, and I moved back to the United States with her, and in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, which I've never been on the East Coast before, but I fell in love with Portsmouth, and so this is where my home is now.
Oh, wow. Great. And where did you study? You study art there in Paris?
I did not.
I misunderstood.
Oh, no, I studied at Kansas City Art Institute in the 60s.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But when I went to Paris, I lived, as you know, in the 6th arrondissement where the Sorbonne is, where the Art Institute is. I was right down the street. It's on Rue Napoleon Bonaparte, which is where the Art Institute is. Literally 3 blocks from where I lived. So I met a lot of artists. There's a cafe there called Palette. And I met a lot of artists there. Matthew Rose, Chiki Margalev. Wish I could remember them all off the top of my head. But we became friends. We became wine drinking buddies. They'd come to my studio. I'd go to their studio. We'd talk about art. We talk about painting. We talk about a little bit of everything. Matthew Rose is really an accomplished artist. So we became, and we're still very good friends. We talk all the time. I've got a lot of his stuff, and he's got a lot of my stuff. So I didn't take any formal classes, but you learn by immersing yourself in the scene.
So do you feel that it changed? I imagine that it did, but it changed your art? I mean, the way you...
Definitely. I mean, we'd look at each other's artwork and comment on it and say, why did you choose that color there? Or why is that composition a little heavier on this side than the other side? You know, things like that. Simple things. Not like, oh, I hate that piece.
No, but that's great experience. So
yes,
thank you.
Yes,
thank you for sharing.
So this is fun. We have another question from Facebook. And Anna Maria asks, what do you recommend to a starting artist to get recognized?
Oh gosh, I was lucky. I was extremely lucky. I met some people that knew some people that said, oh, you know, when I was living in Paris, somebody from San Francisco, which is where I lived for 20 years, somebody from San Francisco recommended me to the person who was the curator for the Dalai Lama project, which was called The Missing Piece, P-E-A-C-E, and said, you should apply for this. And so I just sent in an application and said, I will do a portrait of the Dalai Lama in this style. Oh, by the way, let me show you, if you haven't seen it on my website, this is my altar of the Dalai Lama. And that, if you can see, is a postcard of my painting that I did of the Dalai Lama. It's called Evolution vers une Incarnation. It's about 5 feet by 7 feet portrait. It's very bright Fauvism colors. I don't know if you can see it well. Can you see it, Aaron?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. That really got me started. I was very lucky because of that. So Anna Marie, I don't know how to tell you to find luck, but that helped me. Also, my wife was in the art world, so she helped out a lot. So it was very easy for me after the Dalai Lama piece in the early 2000s to get an agent, and an agent really helped. They would get me into galleries. You know, some you win some, you lose some, but it's a weird world. Just work, and put your stuff out there. You never know what somebody will see or somebody will think, and who their friends are. So that's all I can say is work, and luck will come to you.
Yeah. And networking. I think from what we've heard from you today, you've also spent a lot of time, in addition to working, networking, meeting other artists, kind of figuring out how it has worked for other people as well.
Oh, absolutely.
All right. So we have a couple of minutes left. while folks think about other questions they might have for Chase, you can also put comments in the chat. I do save the chat, and I'll share that later. But I'm going to share my screen again, so that if you would like to learn more about Chase and his artwork and have not already visited his website, go to chasebailey.com, or you can follow him on Facebook at Chase Bailey Art. You know, following people is another way to build your artist network. We hear increasingly from curators that the social media world is where they're finding out about new artists. And it's also where artists can make friends with each other. And then my last screen share, as I mentioned, this is our final virtual studio visit for the month of June. We actually are preparing to reopen our gallery by appointment only on June 16th. You may have read about that in our June newsletter. And if you haven't, we'll have more information posted on our website and on our social media channels. But if you have enjoyed our virtual programs, if you want to see them continue, you can text YAY CAA to 44321 to make a donation. I've done it. It's very easy. It's literally like a 2-click process. And we appreciate your support in that area. So with that, I'm going to stop my share and go back to Chase. More positive comments from everyone.
Thank you very much for visiting my studio today.
Yeah, thank you for having us, Chase. I mean, it's such a beautiful space. I can imagine that some of our other guests on the call are envious of how much space you have. But if there are no more questions, I'm actually just going to unmute everybody and say thank you. Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you to so many of you for joining us. I think we've done 14 of these now. But thank you for coming, and we'll let you know when the next one is.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.
so much.
I hope
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
And also thank you to everyone who watched on Facebook Live. This is our second ever Facebook Live. And I guess it's pretty cool.
Great.
Thank you, Erin.
So thank you so much,
Bye.
everybody. Thank you, Chase. Have a great
Thank you,
day,
Erin.
folks.
See you soon.
See you.
Fantastic.
Bye.
Have a nice break. Have a nice break.
Bye, Adriana.
Judy.
Thanks so much.
Good to see you.
You too.
Hi, Judith.
Hi. Hi, how are you?
I'm good.
This is fun. I like it. It's cool.
Hi, Mary.
Hi, Karen.
Now, Lorraine, nice haircut.
Yeah, haircuts. We all
Yeah. Thanks, Chase. That was great. Amazing stuff. Thank you, Erin.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. All right, I'm going to end the meetings. Have a great day.
Okay, bye.
Bye, Erin. Thanks.